I'll let Toby start with the presentation here, and should be an awesome learning experience.
All right. Thanks. Thanks,
Oh,
Dylan, for that intro. And thanks everybody for showing up tonight. I saw that the camera there a few moments ago showed the room. Looks like you got a pretty good crowd in there tonight. How many people you got there about?
too many to count. No,
Oh, nice.
I'm just very slow
That's a good
counter.
start.
No, it's like 20, something like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know I did a lot of user groups coming up through my career, and a lot of times I would show up and there would be like maybe two people there. And it was always, it's always fun. Like even if it's just two people, it's still a lot of fun to like talk shop for, a couple hours. But it's always better when there's, more like 10 people or 20 people. And so over 20, that's a big user group. So thank you guys and gals so much for showing up tonight. And my name is Toby Schnars, Too Tall Toby. And tonight we're going to talk about some SolidWorks tips and tricks. So let me share my screen here and we'll get going. So tonight is Thursday, February 12th. And what we do on our website, tootalltoby.com, is we challenge people to take 2D drawings and turn them into 3D models. It's kind of like a gym for people who want to practice their CAD skills and maybe like work on models that are of a different type of model than what they typically do at the office. So if you were to look at a model like this, I'm actually going to use this model throughout the demonstration tonight, but I just wanted to show this model to everybody. I just want you to kind of ask yourself, what would be the fundamental questions you would ask yourself in SolidWorks when it comes to creating a model like this? You would want to ask yourself things like, where should the origin be located on this model? And what would my very first sketch look like? And what sketch plane would I start on? And when you're brand new to the world of 3D CAD, you often feel intimidated by a model like this, where there are many different features and maybe many different places where you could begin. And there's never, one single correct answer to that question, but there are some kind of fundamental principles that you learn to follow. And one of the best ways you can refine that skill is through practice. And so that's what we really try to reinforce on our website, tootalltoby.com. And tonight, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to model up this part, but more importantly, some general tips and tricks that you can use throughout the world of SolidWorks. So again, take a look at this drawing just for a moment. I'm only going to leave it up for about 5 more seconds. Take a look at this drawing for a moment and then ask yourself, what would your first sketch look like? What sketch plane would you be on? Where would the origin be located? Kind of how would you get started on a model like this? And we'll be coming back to this model quite a few times tonight, so you'll have a chance to find out how I would answer those questions. So tonight we're going to do tips and tricks 2026, and then we're going to do a live speed modeling challenge. We'll do about 30 minutes of each, and if we go a little over in either direction, that's okay, but that should give us enough time to do both. And the goals of this presentation are that you will all learn 3 new time-saving tips in SolidWorks. You'll get some of your questions answered, so don't hesitate to shout out your questions. Dylan can relay them to me across his microphone, and I'm happy to deviate a little from the game plan. And of course, the goal is to have some fun with this presentation. So about me, I started doing tech support in 2001 for SolidWorks, did that for about 17 years. And during that time, I closed over 10,000 tech support cases and delivered over 200 training classes. So a lot of experience working with customers and working with troubleshooting. I love troubleshooting. I also have a ton of certifications. You can see a bunch of them I've got up here in the background. And then in 2022, I started my own YouTube channel and my own business called Too Tall Toby. And on that YouTube channel, we have hundreds of videos, tons and tons of tips and tricks on the world of SolidWorks to help you help your time in SolidWorks. Here's the channel. The channel's Too Tall Toby. YouTube, Too Tall Toby. You can just search for it. And we'll be referencing some of these videos as we go through the presentation tonight as well. We also host a training site. So if you like my style of teaching and you want to get certified, we have a CSWP prep class, amongst other classes. tootalltoby.com/training is the site, and we would love to see you in there. It's a great way to kind of continue your SolidWorks education. And another great place to learn some awesome tips and tricks is the CSWP prep class. The goal of that class is to give you everything you need to take and pass the CSWP on your first try. I'm happy to say that we have had 100% success rate. Everybody who's taken that class has passed CSWP on their first try. So it's been a success. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we also host a website called totaltoby.com. And the totaltoby.com website is a library of 2D to 3D CAD challenges. And we're going to use this library a little bit later tonight. So during the presentation, if you go to totaltoby.com and you sign up for a free account, you'll be able to participate in the speed modeling challenge we're going to do a little bit later. So at totaltoby.com, there's a link here. This is Access Full Library. And here what we've got is we've got a library of almost 300 2D to 3D CAD challenges, 2D drawings for you to turn into a 3D model. And the way that these challenges work is that when you click into one of these challenges, you're presented with some analytics, some metrics from the community. We've had a lot of people go through and do these challenges. So like this challenge here, there's been 4,115 people who have successfully done this challenge, and it's got an average solve time of 4 minutes and 3 seconds. If you're doing the challenge and you get stuck, we've got some tutorials included down here right below the challenge. And then when you're ready to actually do the challenge, you click here, you say reveal drawing. And here you can see that this clock begins. So you can time yourself going through and doing the challenge, and then you can do it again and do it again and do it again and kind of experiment with some different workflows. You could say, like, is it better to do those fillets at the sketch level, or is it better to do them at the feature level? And kind of give yourself some actual analytics that you can look at to see if you're getting better. It's a great way to learn 3D CAD. It's a great way to practice 3D CAD. And it's a great way to kind of branch out a little bit and experiment with areas of the software you don't normally work with. You can see here when there's 300 challenges, it can be a little daunting to go through the library. So you can filter this based on what level of difficulty you're ready for, as well as what type of models you want to create. So like if you just wanted to get in there and do some sheet metal work, you could filter by sheet metal, and then you would only have sheet metal challenges in here, and you could kind of challenge yourself and see if you can get better at sheet metal. Maybe that's like an area you never work in and you've been meaning to get better at that area. So that's the website, totaltoby.com. You can get started for free. And then if you like these types of challenges and they help you out, you can unlock the entire library. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be doing a challenge that's going to show up top here. This top section features different challenges each week that are free for all users. And this is a great place where we can host a challenge like the one we're going to do tonight. So currently you can see there's 1, 2, 3 challenges up top here. Well, before the end of the meeting tonight, there's going to be a 4th challenge here that we're going to all try to do together. And that way we can make it a little friendly competition. We can see who can finish that challenge the fastest. Who's the fastest CAD modeler in the room? That's the question. And that's what we're going to find out here tonight. So if you want to participate in that, and if you've got a computer with you, you can sign up for a free account. And that way you'll be ready when we get to about the half-hour mark of this presentation. So let's get into it here. That's the sign up for a free account. And let's get into this. We're going to talk about some sketching tips and tricks, some features and conditions. And then we're going to go back and just talk a little bit more about sketching. We host CAD vs. CAD tournaments as well. We kind of host the overall gamification of 3D CAD. And when it comes to watching these tournaments, we take 2 different SolidWorks experts and we pit them against each other. And we actually watch them battling against one another. And I've learned a lot from watching the different runners, whether it's in SolidWorks or sometimes we have people in other CAD systems too. And one of the most important things I've learned is that if you want to get better and more efficient at 3D CAD, then you really need to work on your sketching game and really get your sketching game down. And there's some kind of fundamental things that you can do to speed along the process. Like if I was going to be creating this model here, what I would do is I would start out down here in the corner with the origin, and then I would create a line that comes across here, but I would use auto dimensioning to get this 135 in place. And I would create a line that comes up here, but I would use auto dimensioning to get this 12 in place here. And then I would come over this direction, and you could even use auto dimensioning in this spot. You could take 135 minus 25 to lock in on that point. And same thing in this direction. You could take your 65 minus 12 to get to that point there. The angle dimension you're still going to have to create on your own, but there's even some tricks we can use there to help with that angle dimension. And before you know it, you're going to have a nice fully defined sketch in one pass. And those are the types of things that it seems like a little thing, but the more you refine those workflows, the better you get at creating geometry that's not only created quickly, but it's also parametrically sound. Because that's really what it's all about. It's not just about like throwing slop down on the screen. You got to be creating geometry that's actually parametrically sound as well. So in the world of sketching, one of the first things that I see that people do that they kind of waste time on is they just don't understand the fundamental workflow for starting a sketch in SolidWorks, and that is to select a plane, begin a sketch, orient your view. It's always been these 3 steps ever since I first started teaching SolidWorks, which was back in like 2001. It's always been these same 3 steps. But the thing is, there's lots of different ways that you can begin this workflow. What I always remind people about is just to look for the shortcut menus that show up in SolidWorks. So this build of SolidWorks is completely vanilla. I blitzed the registry before I came into the meeting tonight. So this is all like how SolidWorks would install and be out of the box. And so if I go here to top plane, begin a sketch, well, I'm not going to click here on top plane and then come up here to the toolbar and choose sketch and then choose a sketch icon. I'm just going to look at the icons that show up when I click over here. Now, another little kind of pitfall that you can get into is in Windows in general, if you click on text and then you click on it again, you go into a rename. So if I click here on top plane and then I click on it again, I end up in a rename. But if I click on the icon for the top plane, then you can avoid that from occurring. So first of all, just kind of be on the lookout for that. Don't click on the text. Instead, click on the icon. But secondly, just look at the menus that pop up, the context menu that pops up. It either shows up if you left click or right click. So if you're a right clicker, that's fine. If you're a left clicker, that's great too. But here you can see select a plane, begin a sketch, orient your view. Now for that third step, orient your view, that's going to occur when you begin a new sketch on the very first sketch automatically. But for subsequent sketches, you can opt in or opt out of having that occur automatically. So now that I've created some solid geometry, I want to run that workflow again. Select a face, begin a sketch, orient your view. See, it just shows up here on this menu. Or again, if you're a right clicker, you can get it to show up here. Sorry, my zoom's not quite working the way I wanted it to. But if you're a right clicker, you can get it to show up here as well. So select a plane, begin a sketch, orient your view. Now, for the second time through, what I do personally is I use Control and the number 8. So there's shortcuts that are built into SolidWorks that just kind of work across the top of the keyboard. It's Control and all the number keys across the top of the keyboard. They're all your standard views. And when you get to Control 8, that's your standard normal 2 view. So what I mean by that is when you do Control 1, that takes you into a front view. You can see down here it says front. And then when you do Control 2, that takes you to a back view, Control 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then when you get to Control 8, that's your normal 2. So Control and the number 8, normal 2, Control and the number 8, normal 2. So for me, what I do is when you get into beginning a sketch, select a face, begin a sketch, orient your view. It's always Control 8 for me. There is an option that you can use to kind of auto rotate the view, but I spend so much time sketching on like a non-normal 2 view that I don't necessarily always want that to kick in. I'd prefer if it was an explicit option. So there is an option here under sketch for auto rotate view normal to sketch plane, but I don't normally check that on personally. It's just personal preference though. You could certainly check it on if you want. But this is just a huge spot that I see people wasting time. They go to begin a new sketch and they don't realize you can do it right from the menus that are just right there. Like you get in here, you start sketching, you create your geometry, you exit the sketch, you cut extrude that geometry. So right click through all, right click. Then you go to this face here, begin a sketch. Like you just pick the face, begin a sketch, get normal 2. And you can right away get in there and start sketching. It's just such a nice time saver when you learn how these, just some of these kind of basic workflows are going to be able to save you time and help you to kind of quickly get in there and start sketching. You don't have to pick this face and then come up here, sketch, pick the sketch, pick this face, go up here, sketch, pick the thing. You don't have to do that every time. Okay, so just remember that one. You don't have to click on the sketch icon. We're going to move through here at a pretty quick pace. So some of the stuff that I'm showing in the slides here are things I talked about during the presentation. Okay, click on the icon, not the name. That'll help you avoid going into a rename. And then when it comes to orienting your view, you can use Control 8 to get normal 2, and Control plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all your standard views. So you don't have to bring up the view cube or like press the space bar and have the thing go like all crazy. You don't have to do that. You can just use Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a good way to get through your views a little bit quicker. If you want to use that auto rotate view, you go for it. You can check that on. All right, so now we talk about the big boy, the most powerful command in SolidWorks, which is the S key menu. So the S key menu in SolidWorks is, I like to call it the ultra power move in sketch mode. And what makes this move so powerful, excuse me for one moment. Sweet, sweet coffee, giver of life. What makes this move so powerful is that you don't have to go too crazy to set it up. You don't have to like spend a ton of time setting this thing up. Like I said, I've got my SolidWorks set up kind of out of the box right now, vanilla, because I blitzed the registry before I got started. But when it comes to the S key, what you're able to do is you're able just to press the letter S on your keyboard and have a menu show up on screen. You press the letter S and this menu shows up here. And what I do to customize it, what I find gives me the most bang for my buck, the most value, the lowest hanging fruit, is I go through and I customize it like this. I go through and I get rid of the line and the rectangle commands that are flyouts, and I replace them with line, corner, rectangle, center line. And then I go down and I add extrude and cut extrude to that S key menu. And simply setting up that configuration, which I have a video for this on the YouTube channel to explain how to do this. Simply going through and setting up that configuration is such a game changer for me. You know, you're going to figure out what configuration works best for you. But for me, what it comes down to is I pick a face, begin a sketch, S key, bring up my S key menu here, and then I right click and I say customize. And so in SolidWorks, there's 4 modes that you can work in. You can work in sketch mode, drawing mode, part mode, and assembly mode. And each mode has a different S key menu. So when you click through these 4 different modes here, you see this different S key menus. But this is the S key menu here for part mode. And so what I do is I take this part mode menu and I kind of resize it to get comfortable. But more importantly, I take this line command here, which is it's a flyout menu for line, center line, midpoint line. And I just get rid of that. I just ditch that altogether. So just ditch that one. And same thing with the rectangle, another flyout menu. I ditch that altogether. And then I go in here to sketch and I add in this command here, line, the explicit command. And this command here, corner rectangle. And this command, center rectangle. And then this command here, center line. And once you add in those commands, the other thing that you can do is you can actually add feature commands to your S key menu. So I could add in here boss extrude, and I could add in here cut extrude. And that's it. You know, it takes 2 minutes to go through and to modify the S key menu to add that information to the S key menu. But now I'm really able to cruise through these menus. I'm able to jump in here and create a rectangle and then immediately jump into a boss extrude and type in the height of that boss extrude and move on to the next feature, move on to the next feature, move on to the next feature. The cool thing is the S key menu is different when you're in feature mode. So you could also add commands in here to feature mode to make your workflow a little bit more efficient. Now, what that workflow is kind of depends on what type of work you do. Like if you do a lot of sheet metal, then when you're in sketch mode, you might add base flange tab to your S key menu when you're in sketch mode, and then you might add edge flange to your S key menu when you're here at the feature level. But the cool thing is you can really refine that S key menu and make it cook, you know, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to show some different things you can do to kind of move through the software faster. We're now at the point where, you know, if I was going to create like a fixture block or, you know, even just like a basic block with a hole in it, let's just call it that. Now what I can do is I can go over here, top plane, begin a sketch, S key, center point rectangle, single click, move my mouse, single click, S key, smart dimension, add the dimension in here, 100, 100, and then add in the dimension in this direction, 200, and then S key extrude, 15 millimeters, enter, pick this face, begin a sketch, S key circle, drop in a circle here, S key dimension, give that circle a diameter, 48 millimeters, S key extrude cut, right mouse button, through all, right click. See, you're able to get through these kind of common workflows really quickly. Now we could go S key fillet, and we could add in a fillet here and then maybe like pick this edge and get all 4 of the edges. This is where you really start saving time in SolidWorks, learning these kind of common workflows and learning how to move through them without ever having to go up here to the command manager. Everything we did there was all on screen. We never had to come up here and actually go on the command manager, and that's really what it's all about. Excuse me, guys. I'm recovering from a pretty bad cold here, so I apologize for the cough, and I'm trying to cough as far off mic as I can go. All right. Any questions so far? Dylan, how we doing? Everybody still awake?
Everyone awake and very interested. No questions currently, unless I don't know. Anyone want to ask a question? No, I think you're good.
We're good. Okay, cool. So auto dimension is the next one in that list of kind of low-hanging fruit to be on the lookout for. So auto dimension in sketch mode is the setting that you access by going into options, sketch settings, and then enable on-screen numeric input and create dimension only when a value is entered. So this is how SolidWorks defines this auto dimension function. Is they call it enable on-screen numeric input on entity creation. It's kind of a mouthful, but you go here to options, sketch, and then you check these two options on here. So options, sketch, and then enable on-screen numeric input and create dimension only when a value is entered. Now, when you do this in SolidWorks, what happens is whenever you go to create geometry, the geometry will now automatically show up with feedback immediately indicating what the parametric size of that geometry is going to be. So now if I S key center point rectangle, single left click and move my mouse, now what happens is I'm immediately presented with feedback regarding what size that rectangle should be. So now I could type in 80, 160, and now I immediately have a fully defined sketch for that rectangle. S key extrude, and then I could type in the height of that, 22 millimeters, and then I could go onto this surface here, begin a sketch, S key circle, and I can drop in a circle like so, and then make that 48, S key extrude cut, right click through all, right click. And now you see we're really cooking, because now as we go through and we create this geometry, we're auto adding dimensions. The other thing you can do with this is you can kind of stack some of this functionality where you could do like a rectangle. You could do a rectangle to define the location of a hole. So what I mean by that is I could create a rectangle here that starts in this lower corner and then move over like so and let go of my mouse, and I could type in 25, enter, 40, enter. And then I could take that rectangle and make it for construction. Now what I've got is I've got the center point of the desired location of a circle, and it's just kind of a different way of adding in the dimensions for that circle. So instead of going in and doing like a drawing in the circle and then doing dimension from the bottom, dimension from the side, it's just a different workflow, but it's one that I saw people doing in the tournament one day, and I thought it was really clever. So instead of, you know where that circle's supposed to be, so you type in 25, 40 for construction because it's already highlighted, and then S key circle, and then 18 millimeters, and now you've got your hole there, which is now parametrically defined. Not like you did anything wrong there. And you were able to locate it just like using kind of a different workflow. So I think it's a really clever workflow to do things like that, instead of doing it with with a regular like 2-dimension location for that hole. Another way to do that is just to straight up construction line it. So like if you know that you've got a hole here that comes down by 60 and then comes over by 25, you could just draw in 2 construction lines and then draw in your hole. That's a little bit big. So this is just kind of food for thought here. I'm going a little bit off script, but this is just for a little bit of food for thought there is
Hey, quick question, Toby.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So why would you not add the holes in your base sketch and eliminate the extra feature, just have it extrude with the hole already in there, if you know you put the holes in?
I mean, usually I separate the holes because it allows you a lot more parametric flexibility downstream. There may be customers that ask for one or both of those holes not to be included, or there may be configurations that ask for one or both of those holes not to be included. So usually that's why I would do it. It depends on what you know about the project ultimately. It's something where like I'm not trying to necessarily sacrifice model integrity for speed. I'm more trying to help people understand how to efficiently work through common workflows and kind of like looking for the repetitive functions that you can anticipate from the software. But for me, I've always been more of a like create your bosses first and then create your cuts second, because you might have a similar project in 6 months that doesn't need those cuts. And so it's easier if they're split up. It's also like usually we're not just sketching rectangles and circles. Usually it's a pretty complicated profile. So like I try to keep my sketches simple because if if there's an error in one of the sketch relationships, it's easier to troubleshoot when there's less entities rather than more. So um it depends. Yeah, it's a good question. So there may be times where it is warranted to to include that additional geometry in the base sketch. But yeah, that's the answer. It just depends on the project.
Any features in the feature tree, and they go, why didn't you combine all that in your sketch?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So,
I think that's a fair explanation. Yeah, but he was also saying to minimize features because sometimes people complain about too many features also. It's a really damned if you do, done damned if you don't in some cases.
I don't
Uh
think it's bad to have
yeah.
too many features. I think if you, as long as you rename your features and as long as you're able to kind of like leave love notes for yourself or for your coworkers, I think it's okay to have more features. I never,
Yeah, organizing with folders and stuff, definitely. If it's a really
yeah,
intense model, can help a lot. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. I'm usually a guy that'll have a lot of features in my tree. I do a lot of like I'll make like a master layout sketch and then use that to drive the size of other features downstream because it's easier to organize those other features if they're all related back to that like sketch at the top of the tree. But then people sometimes will look at my tree and they'll be like, "Is this really necessary? There's only 10 features in this tree." But it's like, well, it just makes it easier and it's easier to understand. It's easier for me to change it later. And like I want to have a meeting with a customer and I want the customer to ask, like, can we make that a little taller? And I want it to rebuild and rebuild successfully. So if that means I got to add a couple extra features in the tree to make that happen, I'm totally okay with that. As long as as long as it makes it. I never like arbitrarily combine features just for the sake of having less features in the tree. I will always go the other way where I will always make an extra feature in the tree. It's something that comes up a lot with like it reminds me of like surface modeling. Like in surface modeling, if you when you're surface modeling, what you're doing is you're trying to create multiple surface bodies that become knit together. Whoops, let me change this to surfaces. Multiple surface bodies that become knit together to create a watertight vessel. So, like if you go here, this is one surface body. And then if I do a fill surface on the top, that's a second surface body. So now I've got two surface bodies. I'll change the color of this one so it's a little easier to visualize. And then if I put another surface body down here, I'll just do another fill surface here at the bottom. Now that's a third surface body. So change the color of that one too. So you can see it over here in the tree. You've got these 1, 2, 3 surface bodies. So 1, 2, 3 surface bodies. So then what you do is currently this is it still doesn't have any volume. It's not like an actual solid here. It's like a theoretic entity. It's just a vessel. So what you do is you perform what's called a knit surface command, and you take these 3 surfaces, you knit them together, and then that turns them into a watertight vessel. And you'll notice here that there's a check mark that says create solid. So when I knit that together, I can also turn it into a solid. Well, me personally, I never do that. Like I knit them together first. So that creates one surface body, which is watertight, but it still has no thickness to it. And then after that's done, then I do what's called a thicken. And then here in the thicken command, you can say create solid from enclosed volume. And then that's going to be my thicken to solid. So I would rename this thicken to solid, something like that. This would be called like knit all bodies. And that would be called thicken to solid. So then the question is like, well, why didn't you just do create solid here? That does the same thing, right? Well, the answer is because a lot of times in surface modeling, you knit surfaces to facilitate like a complex trim, but not every time you knit, you're not necessarily turning it into a solid. And so I didn't want there to be ambiguity when I would look back at the feature tree and like wonder to myself, like, wait, is that the one where I knit it and solidified it? Or is that the one where I knit it and solidified it? Or is that the one? So instead, I just make it a rule. Like I just always do it as 2 features, even though you could do it as one. This makes it a lot easier for me to look at the tree in a year, when that customer asked me to move that surface over a little bit, it makes it a lot easier for me to understand what's going on with that tree. So I know that was a little bit of we kind of like deviated a little bit there, but don't ever hesitate to make more features in the tree. It's fine, especially if it makes it easier for you, and especially if it makes it easier for your coworkers to understand what's going on with that history tree. Because that's where, your company, your team will save time because people will be able to actually like continue to work on those projects as opposed to having to start all over again. That's where you lose the most time. All right, so auto dimensioning. So how does auto dimensioning work in general? Auto dimensioning is a fantastic tool in SolidWorks because what it lets you do is when you go to begin sketching, you go here, front plane, S key, line, single click, move your mouse over, and you can immediately type in a dimension. Move your mouse up in this direction, you can immediately type in a dimension. You can actually move back and touch that endpoint and then come off with an arc. And again, you can type in a dimension there. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff here with auto dimensioning to save yourself time as you are working through your initial sketch of your models. So what that means is if we get back to the example here, let's see here, get back to this example here, where we're going to be trying to create this sketch. Like I said, what I would do is I would start out on the origin here and I would come over and then I'd be able to create this geometry using auto dimensioning. And I would kind of knock out that whole sketch there in one shot using auto dimensioning. So what that would look like for me is I would go new, make sure I'm in a millimeter template, front plane, begin a sketch, S key, line, single click here, move my mouse over, and that's going to go over to 135. Move my mouse up in this direction. That's going to come up to 12. Now I'm going to come back over this way, and this one's going to be 135 minus 25. Now we'll talk about this dimension in just a second. This one here is going to be 65 minus 12. And then we're just going to come over here a little bit, and then we're going to come straight down here to the corner. Now, the thing about this 53 and this 110 is that these don't really match the customer's intent. It doesn't really match the design intent. The design intent is this should be 65 to the max height. The design intent is it should be 25 over to here. But the cool thing is in SolidWorks, when you have dimensions, you can reassign grips. So after I'm done with this sketching, I can press escape, and then I can click on this dimension here, the 53. Oops, I'm going to turn off instant 2D. I have a video about this as well. I'm going to turn off instant 2D here because it's going to get in the way. So I can click on this 53 here, and then I can grab this grip. So you see how the feedback changes? And I could just drag that down here like so. So now I'm matching the customer's design intent. And I can click on this 110 here, and I can do the same thing. I can grab this grip here and move it over here to the origin. And there we go. Now we got that 25 dimension as well. Now, the final dimension that's on here to fully define the sketch is 15 degrees. And when you're working with dimensions in sketch mode, you can also use what's called the magic dimension arrow handle, which means that when you start the dimension command, you can click this line and then click this endpoint here, and SolidWorks will generate a magic arrow handle for you. So I go in here, smart dimension, I click on this line here, I come down here and click on this point, and see I get this 1, 2, 3, 4 arrows here. When I click on one of those, I can use that as the anchor for my angle dimension. And so then I can input a value there of 15 degrees, and there we go. Now we got that sketch nice and fully defined. So now from here, if we're trying to model this part up, let's say that's our first sketch, then we're going to try and bring that out mid-plane to 85 millimeters. And this is what we're going to get into in this next section here. I know we're going a little bit over here, but I'll kind of merge these two sections together so that we can learn from both sections. So here what we'll do is we'll do S key extrude. And what we get into now is this idea of predicting what the software is going to do before you make your next click. So when I go from sketch mode into extrude mode, when I'm in sketch mode here and I got a nice fully defined sketch, and then I press S key extrude, what is the very next thing that's going to happen? Well, I know from experience, the very next thing that's going to happen is the end condition of blind is going to be selected, and the depth of that blind end condition is going to be the editable field. It's going to be highlighted. So what that tells me is if I know the depth of this is supposed to be 85, as soon as I click on that extrude button, I'm going to let go of my mouse and I'm going to move over to my 10 key and I'm going to type in 85 and I'm going to press enter one time. So I'm going to click extrude here. And I notice over on the left in the property manager, the depth is already highlighted. So I'm going to immediately let go of my mouse and I'm going to move my mouse over to my 10 key and I'm going to type in 85, enter one time, and that updates the preview. Now, I want this to be mid-plane. And so one of the best time savers in SolidWorks is if you right mouse button in the background when you're doing an extrusion, you can access your end conditions here. And this is a workflow that I call right mouse button, left mouse button, right mouse button, RMB, LMB, RMB. So what you do is you right mouse button, you go into this menu, you left mouse button, and then you immediately right mouse button again. So you go in here to mid plane, and then you immediately right mouse button again because right mouse button is the same as hitting the green check mark. Now, this flow doesn't occur overnight. You have to practice it. You have to intentionally practice it a few times. But before you know it, you're going to see how much of a time saver it is, because here you can see I'm in sketch mode, S key, extrude, 85, enter, right mouse button, left mouse button, right mouse button. And I'm done. I've got a nice mid-plane extrusion. I'm ready to move on. So now continuing with kind of sketching and auto dimensioning, we're going to create this section here, which comes up to 9 millimeters, and that's going to be this section here, which looks like it's got this. It shares this radius here, which is out to the front of the model. So that radius 77 to get our location there out at the front of the model. We're gonna have to kind of lop off. Whoops, we're gonna have to kind of lop off that front section. Maybe we'll do that first. So let's give that a try. So we'll go here, select this face, begin a sketch, orient our view, S key. We'll do a 3-point arc here. This point to this point. Okay, and then we can take these 2 points here and we can make them vertical. So here I'm just using the vertical relationship on that toolbar. This arc here, this guy over here will make that tangent, and then S key dimension, give that to 77. And something that sometimes people forget about is when you're in a sketch and the sketch is open like this, if you go extrude cut and then you go through all in both directions, so right click, through all both directions, an open entity like that acts like a surface cut. So it allows you to leave that profile open and just cuts through both directions. And then this gray arrow here indicates where the material is going to be cut off. So you can use this flip side to cut to flip that gray arrow. But that's going to indicate which side the material gets cut off from. So then we can hit the green check mark, and that gives us that cut off in the front there. And now I think we're ready to create this shape here. This is it's got a concentric relationship essentially. So that radius 77 has a concentric there for that tombstone shape. Let's see if we can do some auto dimensioning. Pick this face, begin a sketch, orient our view, S key, line, single click, move our mouse, single click again, move our mouse away, come back, touch the endpoint, come around here. This is going to have a radius of 26, enter. Oops. There we go. 26. And we'll get that exactly vertical there. So you see you're just kind of referencing that relationship. Come back over to here. Close that sketch off. And I think the only thing we have to do is make that concentric, and that should go fully defined. So make those two concentric. Oh, yeah, that's what we like to see. And then S key extrude. What's the first field that's highlighted? It's the depth of that extrusion. So that depth is going to be at 9 millimeters, 9, enter, enter. Now we're done with that feature, nice and fully defined. Now, the other shortcut that's kind of cool to know about in SolidWorks is when you're working in SolidWorks and you create a cut extrude, the default cut extrude value is blind, but you can instantly change that either by doing right click, which in the newer builds, you kind of have to do the right click a little bit more. But, well, let me just get this thing to be fully defined. So we'll just make that vertical there. There we go. Nice and fully defined. But in the older builds, what you could do is you could do S key extrude, and as long as this is blind, this will work. The problem is in the newer builds of SolidWorks, this setting is like kind of sticky. And so it remembers if your end condition is through wall or up to surface or whatever. I don't really like that. I think that's a real misstep by the SolidWorks developers. I don't think they should have changed that. I think it should always default to blind, because there's all this cool, rich feature capability in here when it's blind. Like you can double click on a face. This is currently set to blind. You could double click on a face and it automatically changes to up to surface. See that? Double click on a face, it automatically changes to up to surface. Or if this is blind, you can single click on a vertex and it automatically changes to up to vertex. So this used to work really slick, and then they changed it to this kind of like sticky function, and it doesn't work as well anymore, but it is still there. It does still work. It's just it has to be blind in order for that to kick in. Listen, if it doesn't work, it's not that big a deal. You just remember you can right click. So you can right click in the background and you can make that up to surface, left click on the surface, and then right click again to finish that command. So I think that's where I'm going to cut it for the tips and tricks presentation, just because I want to make sure that we have enough time for you guys to do the speed modeling challenge. But hopefully you learned a lot from that. In the sketching section, we talked about the select a plane, begin to sketch, orient your view, control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the different, changing the different views, using the feature icon, not the name, using the S key, using auto dimension, the line arc line workflow, and the bonus. Oh, one thing about the line arc line I forgot to mention, when you're in the line arc line workflow, with the auto dimensioning, you can't press the letter A. So a lot of people know that you can switch between a line and an arc by pressing the letter A. But the thing is, if you're auto dimensioning, then typing the letter A is just going to put an A there in the dimension block. So instead, what you do is you right click. So you right click and then you can say switch to line, and that'll let you switch back to a line. So if you did it by accident and then you like can't get out of it, you're like, oh no, I'm stuck in this. You can right click and then you can go switch to line. Forgot to mention that earlier. All right, and then we got into some feature stuff, some cool end condition stuff. First of all, just be on the lookout. When you jump into the extrude command, you can right away anticipate that the depth field is going to be highlighted. And when you can anticipate that that depth field is going to be highlighted, that's going to be a real value to you, because you're going to be able to just like immediately let go of your mouse and type in the depth and press enter to update the preview. If you press enter twice, that finishes the command. So enter once to update the preview and then enter again to finish the command. That way you can get right back to your mouse. And then we talked about right mouse button menu navigation. The RMB menu, changing from blind to through all is a really good one. And just generally being on the lookout for that whole RMB, LMB, RMB. Another thing that's good to know is that the OK button is found throughout SolidWorks. So when you jump into these right mouse button menus, a lot of times you can get into the OK command. So it's good to leverage those right mouse button menus. And then we talked about the RMB, LMB, RMB workflow, RMB, LMB, RMB. So you go right mouse button, reverse direction, right mouse button again, something like that. RMB, LMB, RMB. Really, really good workflow to know. At the end there, we talked a little bit about the up to surface option. You can double click on a surface to change it from blind to up to surface. And then we also talked about up to vertex. You can single click on a vertex to change it to up to vertex. So with that, I think I'm going to get and we talked about using the open sketch as a through all cut. Yeah, that's always a good one. I like that one a lot. So hopefully that gave you guys some tips and tricks. Hopefully you guys learned a couple of little things there